Here we go, guys. We are in the start of the Advent season. You may have one candle lit on your Advent wreath right now. If you do, good job. You are doing the right thing. You are on the right track. But we're going to talk Advent. We're going to talk about the Feast of St. Nicholas that's coming up as well on December 6th and why every single parent out there listening to the show is going to have something to do on the night of December 5th leading up to December 6th. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about what you should be doing as a Catholic parent to, invoke St. Nicholas into your home this year. And then we're also going to talk about love today and why there is such a, disillusion and a destruction of love and what real love is, not the whole, love is love type movement. We're going to talk about what love actually is and how to acquire it and how to look for it within someone else and how to give it properly. And when we do that, we're going to build a great foundation to talk about marriage and to talk about bringing children in the world, which is kind of my MO for these next few podcasts coming out. So without further ado, welcome back to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. All right, you guys. So we're in the start of Advent. And if you haven't heard me talk about it before, I'm pretty sure I talked a little bit about it on my last podcast when we talked about sacred versus secular. If you haven't heard that one, you could definitely go back and listen to that. It's a great one where we just talk about a little bit of the difference going on in regards to, what the holiday season is versus the Advent season. And the Advent season is a time of preparation. It's a time of expectation. It's a time of penance. Whereas the holiday season is more so a time of noise. It's a time of selfishness is probably a great word. What kind of gifts am I looking for this season? It's a time of overeating and feasting through cookies. And we want to make sure as we are, preparing ourselves this Advent season, we're not falling into the secular culture of the holiday season. And we're really focused on the expectation of knowing that Christ is coming. Now, Christ came in Bethlehem on that day, December 25th. He was born. We know that. But what we need to recognize again is that he is going to be coming a second time. And the Advent season is for preparation of the heart. We should be preparing ourselves for the coming of Christ. Now, when will that coming be? Nobody knows. Okay. It could be on December 25th this year. It could be in 25 years. It could be in 2,500 years. We have no way of knowing. But it's very important that we prepare ourselves, whether we are to see him at the end of our life or we are to see him here on this earth when he comes again. And again, this is something that I feel like we just don't think about a lot, and we need to be preparing ourselves and really planning for that. And what we've done here at Rosary and Real Estate is we've come out with a course. It's an Advent 25-day challenge, and it's labeled Ready to Die. Now, Ready to Die course is not meant to be morbid, but it's meant to portray an idea of dying to yourself. Because in order for us to really have God, we need to die to ourselves. And as he says, we need to pick up our cross daily and follow him. And the Advent 25-day challenge in Rosary and Real Estate is focused on that. We go through a scripture verse every single day that revolves around one of four themes, whether it's hope is the first week, peace is the second week, joy is the third week, and love is the final week leading up to Christmas Day. We just go through a scripture, we do some reflection, we ask a reflection question, and then we kind of just keep it going. It's very light. Each day is about 5 to 7 minutes, nothing too crazy. But the point is to keep us grounded in the noisiness of this season, a season that's meant to be celebrated in silence. And we need to remember that as we're continuing in through Advent. And on that note, if you haven't signed up for the Advent Challenge with Rosary and Real Estate, you could go to rosaryandrealestate.com. You could click Join Rare and you could sign up right there. Or if you want it to be even simpler, you could just go in the show notes and I'm going to drop the login, not the login, the sign up to join Rosary and Real Estate so you could join. It's a totally free challenge. Really, all that I'm asking is that if you do it, you commit to it. That's basically it. Commit to it. Make these next 25 days really good preparation for your soul so that you are ready to see Christ face to face when that time does come. Now, on that note, December 6th, the feast day of St. Nick. And us Catholic parents, we need to be doing something very, very special for our children. So let's just bring it back to who is St. Nick, right? And of course, again, talking about secular culture, everybody knows Santa Claus. And what is Santa Claus known for? He's known for being this big fat dude that comes down the chimney and drops presents underneath the tree. And everybody loves him. And they got some elf named Chip who's on the tree every day for the 25 days of Christmas and all this other stuff, right? And all that stuff is fine. I'm not even throwing shots at Santa Claus. But what we need to understand is the origin of this holiday, and it's very important as parents to be teaching our children. And again, I want you to think about this. What does your children know about Christmas? Do they only know about Santa Claus? Do they only know about eating cookies and drinking hot chocolate and watching Rudolph? Because if they do, that I'm really, kind of trying to challenge you guys to switch the narrative within your home here. Really make the narrative the origin of the Christmas day, which of course is the birth of Christ, but bring Santa Claus to Saint Nick and get your children to focus on Saint Nick. So Saint Nick, and a big reason why I love Saint Nick, by the way, Saint Nick came from a very wealthy family, and he inherited a lot of money when his parents died from the plague. Now, he did not take this money and say, hey, I'm going to do kind of what the prodigal son did, where he goes out and he's, going and spending that money in bad places and doing bad things. He said, I want to be generous with this money and I want to help people, right? So he inherits all of this money. And I think that's also why I really love him for kind of a great symbolic representation for Rosary and real estate, because we're all about building generational wealth and passing it down. And having a child like Saint Nick, who's not necessarily going to blow that money and wants to be generous with it, is always a positive. But Saint Nick receives this money. And the most common story about Saint Nick is that there was a husband in his town, or something, excuse me, a father in his town. There was a father in his town who had 3 daughters, and he didn't have money for the daughter's dowry when they were to be married. So back in that time, in order for a daughter to be married, the father had to bring up some sort of dowry, which is like goods or money. Think of like if he had horses or he had just a good amount of gold stashed away. It's kind of like now where like there's an expectation that kind of like the daughter's family is going to pay for the wedding, which isn't always the truth. But in some case, that's kind of what it was in that sense, right? So there's this father, he's got these 3 girls, and he doesn't have any money for the dowry. So what does Saint Nick do? He hears this and he wants to help, and he has money stashed away because he was strategic. He didn't go and blow it, but he doesn't want anybody to know that he's doing it, right? So he kind of climbs through windows and he maybe goes down a chimney. I don't know if that was absolutely certain or whatever, but he finds ways to strategically put money into the father's home as dowry for the daughters. And he does this for the first 2 daughters. And on the 3rd daughter, the father catches him. But Saint Nick says, don't tell anybody that I'm doing this. Basically, just, accept it as a great gift from God and pass it forward. And it's a beautiful sentiment for this season. And I think with this season, there's such a focus on buying the best gifts for people and getting gifts, right? I think equally you might even kind of be like, oh, if I buy really good gifts for people, I'm going to get really good gifts back. These kind of, subtle thoughts that are in your head. And Saint Nick brings forth this idea of, let's not be more in the sense of, oh, look what I got you. Let's be more in the sense of silent generosity. And what do we do as parents on December 6th, right? So December 5th, here's exactly what you guys are going to do. You are going to put under your Christmas tree a pair of shoes, okay? Your children's shoes, not your Nike Air Force Ones or your, Prada heels or anything along those lines. You're going to put your children's shoes under the tree. You're going to put little chocolate gold coins in those shoes, and you're going to put oranges as well. And I'll give you guys kind of a little bit of background on these 3 things, right? The shoes represent a willingness and a readiness to walk in the path of God, to walk towards holiness. The gold coins represent silent generosity from Saint Nick. And the oranges, this is a little bit different, but in, depictions of Saint Nick, he was holding kind of these spheres of gold that contained the gold coins. So the oranges, because, actual gold isn't like, a practical thing for anybody to be able to just put under the tray. The oranges represent that, right? But really what you want to understand here is what you're really preaching to your children is humility and generosity. That is the teaching of Saint Nick. In this time of, the holiday season building up to Christmas, I'm sure your children are very excited about gifts that they're going to be getting, which is totally fair and normal. All kids should be that way. There's a great, there's such, amazing excitement that's built in. I know just what my children, like I can't wait to see my kids' faces when they're opening up gifts for sure. But when you have this going on and Saint Nick does these things under the tree, you want to really emphasize to your children the story of Saint Nicholas and his generosity, his humility, his love for God and love for neighbor, and really make that a focal point throughout the Advent season leading up to Christmas. So I know everybody's going to do it, but this is what you need to do. You got to start doing this stuff in your family, guys, because I'm telling you, especially when your children are around people that aren't doing these types of things, the Santa Claus secular culture comes roaring forward and it's going to consume your children's minds. And you want to make sure you ground them in what the actual background of Christmas is, which is the birth of Jesus Christ, and how there's just such absolute beauty in the Saint Nick story to use during this holiday season, during this Christmas season. So make that a focal point, guys. All right, so I'm feeling very inspired lately. I've been reading Archbishop Fulton Sheen's 3 to Get Married. It's a book that I actually opened up when Christina and I were getting ready to be married. We were engaged. I remember I started reading it probably a couple weeks out before the wedding, but so much of it at that time was just going over my head, honestly. I feel like, we got married a little over 3 years ago now. I feel like I was just not nearly at a level of, what's the right word that I'm looking for here? I don't want to necessarily say sophisticated because that sounds very boastful. But I wasn't a huge avid reader at the time, so a lot of it was kind of dense. But also, what I will say is I feel like over these past 3 years specifically, I've grown so much more in my faith that a lot of the stuff that he's saying now makes a lot of sense. So I absolutely recommend this book, 3 to Get Married. It's an unbelievable book. I mean, I'm reading it and my mouth is on the floor half the time from the things that he's saying. It's just so understanding and relatable. And the reason why is just because it's truth, right? Again, we live in a world where right now the huge saying is everybody knows is love. But like, what actually is that, right? There's no true definition to that. It's the definition that they've created. It's a religion that they've created, basically, right? So what we really need to understand is love has actual tangible aspects to it. And Fulton Sheen breaks this down in a great way. And that's how we're going to kind of go through this. We're going to talk about the 3 tiers of love. We're going to talk about love as a definition, as Fulton Sheen gives to us. And we're going to do a little bit of self-reflection to understand, where do we love? How are we loving in regards to our relationships? And what does it look like to be better? And what I really want to build this up to, guys, is this. If you're married, I want you to take this and I want you to think about this as you're going through your marriage and understanding how you could utilize it to better your marriage. And if you're not married, I think this episode might be even more beneficial for you because it's going to allow you to do a little self-reflection to see how you're really giving your love. And also it's going to give you an idea of what to look for in a partner, right? And I think that's very, very important. So if I were to ask you guys this question of what is love, how would you describe it? How would you give me an answer to that? Would you say, honestly, it's an emotion that I can't even describe? I feel like for me, that's kind of one. Would you maybe look at like how your, spouse or someone that you're really close with does certain things and how that makes you feel and why you feel like that's love, right? Like for instance, like, there's the 5 languages of love and my wife's is quality time. So if I ask her, hey, how do you know that I love you? She might say, well, you spend a lot of quality time with me, right? Or, if your love language is giving gifts, right? And someone gives you a gift, that might be a way of them showing that they love you, right? Things along those lines. So that's one way to kind of look at it. But what we're really going to do is we're going to break this down into 3 tiers. Now, all 3 tiers are important. And there's a development of the tiers. I want to make that very, very clear. But it's important to understand kind of where you are in your life. If you are single, if you are in a relationship, if you're married, right? And I think you're going to be able to kind of put all 3 of these tiers in regards to all 3 of those stages of life that you are and really understand where you are on that spectrum and where you're trying to get to. So the first stage of love is an emotional and a sensual love, right? And the root word of this is eros, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. I could be wrong on that. But basically what this is your lowest level of love. Now it's a real love, right? Don't get me wrong. It's not necessarily a fake love. It's just your lowest level. And it's mainly based off of attraction. It's based off of kind of feelings. And the biggest thing is it's based off of pleasure. You need to understand that. When you have a sensual and emotional love, you're seeking pleasure within that love. And Fulton Sheen really outlines that. It is real, but it's not a sustainable and a stable love. And it's definitely not a good love for marriage. And I think we're starting off hot here. I think the biggest reason why so many marriages are failing is because people are entering into marriage at this lowest level of love. They are entering in at this sensual, this emotional level when all they're doing is they're seeking pleasure. And eventually, as that marriage continues to progress after it's past the honeymoon, which by the way, honeymoon is like sweet like honey. The marriage is sweet like honey, but then it's ever changing like a moon. It's in adaptation. It's in change on the back end. Once they get past that honey phase and they get to the changing moon phase, that's where so many people are like, yeah, I'm out, no fault divorce. We're done here, right? Because they lose that self-seeking pleasure that they only had entering into the marriage. And it's very unfortunate because you have some side of that marriage that isn't there, right? They're maybe at a further tier along the lines in regards to how they love, but that other person is just in that pleasure seeking. So again, that sensual, that emotional, that's pleasure. You are looking to see, what can I get out of this love? So now let's bring it into the second one, right? The second one is human or friendship love, also a philia love, right? And it's a little bit deeper, guys. This one's a little deeper than your emotional and your sensual, your eros love, but it's still not there in regards to what you need for a full-blown strong marriage. But this is a good love. This is a love that really has shared interests. It has kind of a mutual respect to it. You admire the other person, you care for them deeply, and it's really where you just kind of enjoy doing life together, right? And you could put this on a few different planes. I look at, like, my business, D&D Equities, where I buy all my, real estate holdings and things along those lines. My partner is Steve. He's one of my best friends, right? If not my best friend, I look at him like a brother. I love doing life with him. I love going through the craziness of buying properties and dealing with, crazy tenants and having to, like, get out of certain situations. All of that is fun. I enjoy doing that. I love him on a filial level, right? He's a brother of mine. He's a friend of mine. But then I also love my wife in this sense too, right? I love, spending time with my family and with our children. I love going on dates together. There's so many things that I love. I love doing life with my wife and going on trips and all this other stuff. So this is very important. You need filial love in your marriage, but you could also have filial love out of your marriage, and it's still very good. It's still beneficial. Now, the last one is the divine and sacrificial love. And this love is called agape. And I love that word for agape. This is the highest form of love, truly the top tier. And it's the perfect mirror of Christ and his church. Now, why is it a perfect mirror, right? Because it's rooted in sacrifice. It's a self-giving love. And ultimately, it does the good for the other person at all costs. And that's very important. When we look at this love and we mirror it with Christ, what do we see? We see Christ's love for us, and we see that he loved us so much that he died on a cross for us. That is it. That is sacrificial love. So if I were to ask you, hey, do you love your wife? And you said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, would you be willing to die for her? And you hesitate at that answer. We might need to do some work on the agape love, right? That's all I'm going to say. We might need to do some work on the agape love. The agape love is self-sacrificing, right? And I think ultimately, and a great line from Fulton Sheen that I really love is he said, the cross of Christ is a better example of love than Cupid. Cupid shoots you with an arrow and you get this emotion of love, right? What is that? That's that sensual love, that eros love that we were talking about. Whereas the cross is the self-denial, is the perseverance. It's the patience that marriage requires. It's that giving up of yourself and pouring yourself out for the betterment of your spouse. It is the doing whatever it takes to get your spouse to heaven. It's that kind of love, right? It's that I'm going to, put my feelings aside. I'm going to put myself out of the position of getting pleasure, and I am in the position of just giving pleasure. I want to give it as much as I can. That's the agape love. The agape love. That's what it is. And that's what we should all be striving for, right? That is the highest form of love. And when you have that agape love, when you love that much, when you enter into marriage with that love, and you do it in the sacrament of the Catholic Church, you enter into the covenant. You are not entering into a contract, which again, when we talk about why marriages are failing, it's because everybody's entering into a contract. They're not entering into a covenant, right? And first and foremost, they're not doing it the right way. Most of them aren't getting married in, the Catholic Church and going through the full sacrament. But basically, it's kind of like, hey, I really love how we've, gone on a bunch of trips together and we live together and we're having a lot of fun with each other and you make me feel really good. So I think I want to marry you and I, want to have a kid and maybe we'll have a kid before and all this other stuff. And that's how this all leads into just more of this contract. And a contract is, what can I get out of it? If I sign a contract to buy a real estate deal, I promise you I'm not doing things in that contract that make me not get what I want. right? I'm trying to set the contract up to get exactly what I want, whether that's an inspection clause, whether that's, seller concessions, whether that's an extended close date if I need more time to raise money, whatever the case might be. I am setting that contract up to get what I want. And that's how most people are entering into marriage. They're entering in with that emotional love where they're setting up this contract. Whereas really we need to be evolving ourselves to an agape love, to a self-giving love, and entering into a covenant. That's what we need to do. And I want you to reflect on this for a second. Is your marriage rooted in an agape love and formed in a covenant? Or are you living in more of a, I get upset when my wife doesn't do what I want? Or, my girlfriend really hasn't, complimented me this week. And, because of that, I'm going to go and DM a few girls on Instagram and try to get compliments in other places. All right. These are things that, maybe we laugh at when we're listening to, but like, think about it. It's probably a lot of truth behind it. So we need to understand these tiers. We need to get to that highest tier of agape. And how do we get there? I think that's a really valid question, right? How do you get to an agape love? I think understanding what love is very important. And again, we're defining love, but what is love? And I think the best example, as we talked about, is Christ. So focus yourself on Christ. Focus yourself on the way Christ pours himself out for you. And when you're able to do that, you understand what agape love is. Because I think a big problem is people just don't even know what it is. We live in a world where like everything's about self-pleasure. You have your iPhone in your hand. You can do whatever you want on that. It's scary how much you can do on that. So I think you really need to understand what agape love is. And the example of that is Christ. So now that we kind of know that, right, let's talk about love in the form of a definition. And again, Fulton Sheen talks about this in a definition. I think it's just so good. The way he portrays this and describes this. He says, love is a mutual self-giving that ends in self-recovery. Think about this for a second. It is a mutual self-giving that ends in self-recovery. It takes two, okay? As we kind of talked about in the earlier example, if you have that agape love and you're, I love my, wife or my, significant other, whatever the case might be, I love them so much, I'm pouring myself out, but the other person isn't giving it back, you get exhausted. And most of us have probably been in a relationship like that in the past where you just feel so infatuated with somebody, you would do anything for them. If asked, would you die for them? You would say yes within an instance. But that other person's just not fully there, right? They're kind of maybe, there for a week and then they're not there and they're kind of in and out. And the realities of that situation is just you're both not on that agape love, right? You might be at agape or maybe you're at, philia, but they're still at that emotional love. They're not there yet. And love, true love, is that mutual self-giving. So when we say mutual self-giving, I am pouring myself out to my wife in all instances. I am dying to, better her, right? That's it. I am carrying the cross. And in return, she is doing the same thing. And by doing that, there is a self-recovery. I am pouring myself out. I'm getting exhausted. But then she's pouring herself out and that's refueling me and she's getting exhausted. So when I'm pouring myself out, she's getting refueled. Do we understand this? Do we see this? That is what true love is. It's the pouring of yourself out onto the other. And then by them pouring themselves out onto you, there's this recovery. And that's what builds up for such a successful and vibrant marriage. And that's what you should be striving for. And if you are pouring yourself out, guys, and you're seeing that it's not coming from the other person, it is a big indicator that you maybe should rethink about what's happening here. You need to understand, is there a roadmap for them coming into this agape love so that I'm being recovered? Or am I just going to, derive myself with exhaustion and eventually burn out and tire out and it's going to fail? So we need to understand that. We need to think about that. And here's another beautiful thing, and I'm going to save this more so for future podcasts that we have coming up. But, God says to us in the book of Genesis, two flesh become one. Okay. And when we look at love, and I'm going to tease this a little bit because I want to get into this a little bit more on another episode. But when we look at love, we look at the Holy Trinity. What's the Holy Trinity, right? Some of you guys might actually be asking that question. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. That's the Holy Trinity. God the Father is the lover. He loved the Son. The Son, Jesus Christ, is the beloved. And from that love came love itself, which is the Holy Spirit. And again, we're going to get into that more. So when you look at your marriage, you look at your wife, okay? Or if you're planning for marriage, hoping that you have marriage in the future, you need to love that person so much, and they also need to love you so much that two flesh become one, a union, a united soul. And from that union comes actual love in the form of children. And when you have that, you have this triangle, right? This triangle, and it's just this absolute flow of love. It's never ending. It's constant. And that's the beauty. That's how we can emulate the Holy Trinity in the form of our marriage. Our marriage is a Trinity within ourselves, right? With the husband, the wife, and the children that come. And that is when agape love is truly recognized. And what's the scariest thing out there, guys, I'm being honest with you, very, very scary thing, is we're not developing this agape love before having children. We're not entering into a covenant before having children. And I know a lot of people that have children before they're married, and they're phenomenal people. They're in really, really great relationships. I don't necessarily think it's a lack of agape love there. I think it's more of a lack of, holding on to tradition. They're not very traditionalist people, and that's how they kind of went about their life. But it's when there's not the agape love there. And it's the emotional love that leads to a child being born, and there's no covenant. And unfortunately, yes, you could say as a parent, I love my kid. I'd do anything for my kid. Sure, I believe it. I do. Because when you see that child, there's nothing that, it totally turns you into a different person. But the foundation is not very strong. And that's what we really need to be focusing on. We need to focus on building strong foundations within a covenant, not a contract, that's filled with agape love. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to say here is, how are you loving? This is a very, very important topic to really, really self-reflect on here before we end the show today. How are you loving? What state of love are you finding yourself in? Are you in the emotional, sensual state of love where your primary focal point is seeking for yourself? And again, there's phases to love here, guys. If you're single and you don't have a relationship, and you're kind of trying to find somebody that's going to make you feel good and it's going to make you happy, it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? Most of the time, why do you date? You date to kind of find out like what you like and what you don't like, right? You have to know yourself before you can really go and try to look for someone in regards to a spouse, right? In regards to someone you're going to spend your life with. You need to know what it is that you're looking for as well. But if you're at that sensual level, right, and you're kind of, especially at the stage of like, hey, I go to the bar and I'm looking for someone to, take home that night because I find them attractive, you're very much at level one. And I promise you this, you're never going to be happy in this world until you really understand what love is, right? I look at like Justin Bieber. I'm a big Justin Bieber fan, right? I think, he's an unbelievable talent. And it makes me very sad to see what he's going through right now. And my wife, her Roman Empire is, the Selena and Justin Bieber back time of the 2016, whatever that was, time frame. And you look back at some of these pictures of Bieber and Selena Gomez, and it's like, oh my gosh, like they look so happy together. And now I see videos of this guy, and he's like walking out of his car. He's leaving his wife in the car. He's not like posting for her birthday. He's like, trash talking to her when she was like on a cover magazine or whatever. And it's, I'm not saying this to bag on him. Like, it's actually a sad thing. And I think he entered, and again, I'm going out on a limb. I'm not necessarily trying to make assumptions about his marriage and how he feels, but it seems from an outside view that he entered into marriage with more of that sensual love, maybe even a little bit of the philia love, because he probably enjoyed doing things. But there's just no real substantive proof right now that that's full agape love. Not saying that his love with Selena was agape either, right? I'm just using this as an example. And you look at a guy, another, great actor, Leonardo DiCaprio. The guy has so much, right? After all this time, he was chasing, what is it, an Oscar? But really, to me, from looking at that from an outside lens, he's really chasing love, and he's kind of stuck, it seems like, at that first tier. And again, this is not me pointing judgment on celebrities or anything along those lines. It's just all outside perspective, because I promise you guys, when you don't experience agape love, you're never going to be happy. I think I see this with a lot of people in my age range as well, of people that are just, they're going out every single weekend and they're chasing something, but they're never going to get it because they're looking in the wrong places, right? You need to look internally first, understand how you love, where your faults are, build upon that. And then once you've built that out and you understand who you are, what you're looking for, what love is, you can go to the right places to seek it. And I really saw my wife the first time after a long time. I saw her in church. It's a great place to find love, right? After we received the Eucharist, I saw her as I was walking back. She was head down, praying, very devout in her pew, and I knew that she was the one for me. So build upon your love. Understand the tiers of love. Understand what tier you're currently in, where you need to get to. And then if you are in a relationship, build upon that agape love. Make sure that it is a primary factor within your relationship leading up to marriage. Or if you are in marriage and you feel like you're not at that agape level right now, you need to get there. You have to get there. It is what will sustain, it is what will thrive the marriage. So, all that to say, if you guys agree with me, like the video, subscribe. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, I appreciate a rating. Please feel free to leave a review. Join the Rosary and Real Estate community. Come join the 25-day Advent Challenge, Ready to Die. Make sure you put those things, your children's shoes, the gold coins, the oranges under the tree on December 6th for St. Nick Day, and make sure you really tell them about humility, generosity during this season. And I appreciate you guys. Pray the rosary, buy real estate. Don't do what makes you happy. Do what makes you holy. I will see you guys next time. Peace out.